Hey everybody, welcome to the Pet Food Puzzle Guy. My name is Glenn, and of course, I love my Nutrition Mission folks out there. And if you're new to my channel, the Nutrition Mission basically is a group of folks, and we want to take the discussion of nutrition and bring nutrients back into the discussion. So that's what the Nutrition Mission is all about. So welcome. Today we're going to talk about pet food bias, and we're just going to have some fun with this, but it's actually really important because people will come to my channel and tell me, oh, well, you worked for Hills for 40 years, so you're biased. Or people will say, I'm really looking for an unbiased review of this diet. We hear so many different opinions, and so I want to go through this, and hopefully this will be beneficial. As I went through it, it really helped me kind of understand my channel and all the different people coming in with the different opinions. So if you're a pet lover and a pet parent and your pets are your family, then this video is for you, and hopefully it will help you understand yourself a little better as a pet parent. So we'll see. I'm not a psychology guy, but we'll see how this goes. Okay, so here's my attempt at dealing with pet food bias. Okay, so now before this video is over, I will show you a food that is promoted, and everything about it is totally unbiased. So I will show you that food before the end of this video, okay? But first of all, let's deal with what is bias. Now, bias as a noun is, that we all understand what it is. It's kind of a slant toward a certain perspective or a certain position versus the other. We're kind of choosing sides, right? That's where that bias comes in, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And of course, it could be an adjective too. I'm not going to go to the dictionary for these, but as an adjective, we all know what that would mean. That, I have a biased approach or a biased opinion of Blue Buffalo or of Science Diet or of kibble or of raw food, whatever. That I'm not coming with a fair, just being totally subjective. I have a bias, and we all say that we want to be. We want to hear from unbiased folks, and half the time, I think, don't we say about ourselves that oh, I'm unbiased. I'm just looking at the evidence, or I'm looking at the product, and that really just isn't true. I'm going to challenge you. So this is going to be kind of a little different than some of my other videos, but I'm going to challenge you that if you think you're unbiased, you're just fooling yourself because you are biased. There is no such thing as anyone unbiased out there. And if there were, I don't think I'd be interested in listening to what they had to say. So let me try to explain this a little bit. So let's just stick with pet food for a moment here, okay? You feel that you are pretty unbiased and you're just kind of looking at products and trying to compare, and you're doing research, okay? And I am here to tell you that you're not unbiased, and that's okay. I'm not faulting you. I'm not judging you. I am a totally biased person, and everybody you meet, especially in this topic, in this realm of pet food, they're all biased as well. Let's try to look at bias as experience. I'll give you a few examples here. Somebody just the other day said, oh, you have almost 40 years working for Hills, so you're biased. Absolutely. I mean, I spent 34 years under the tutelage of incredible people, board certified nutritionists that were formulating these incredible diets, making all these incredible discoveries. And as a field rep, I would be in the clinics all day long and every day for 34 years. It's a long time. And I would see the results of these foods. So not only did I see the people that created these foods and their passion and their love for their own animals and for the animal kingdom, but I also got to see the real world results with veterinarians and the patients that they had and the people that loved their animals as much as me. So am I biased towards that experience? Absolutely. Am I biased toward board certified nutritionists and lots of data and research? I just love all that. Okay, that is my bent. That's what I go for. Most veterinarians are that way. They're very science oriented. They're kind of skeptical of things till they see clinical evidence and peer reviewed studies and all that kind of stuff. So that's the world that really I love. I just go toward that. Okay. Um, that bias is there. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, well, I feed raw, do I have a bias toward them feeding raw food? Um, I don't mind them feeding raw, but the bias is there, right? So there's plenty of people that feed raw and they do it great and all, but the bias back here that I've learned, that balance of nutrients and all this chemistry and all this stuff is so important. If you're not applying that to your raw diet that you're feeding, I'm concerned, okay, because of my bias that nutrition science, this is how it works. So when I look at raw, I have to try to apply my experience to that raw diet. Let's look at the person that Rodney Habib, real popular guy on YouTube, and in the pet world out there, especially the holistic, all natural pet world. He had a dog that actually died during the melamine poisoning back in 2007. Uh, he was just a typical pet owner feeding food. That tragedy happened to him. And he then went on this journey of discovery of pet food and what goes into pet food and all. Now, do you think from that experience of feeding a trusted food that he thought was fine for his pet and losing his pet over it, I can't even imagine how that would feel. Do you think he has a bias toward big food companies or commercial food companies, doing ultra processed foods? I would say so. And he does. If you look at he calls it his journey, but his journey from that point, he is totally pro this way, natural whole foods and everything, and totally against so-called ultra processed food. Not even distinguishing, could there be good and bad within the whole fresh approach, and even in the ultra processed, is there any difference? No, in his mind, his bias is this is all bad, this is all good, based on that tragedy that he went through, that personal tragedy. Now, just as a side note, it's kind of interesting here. It just shows how bias isn't always accurate or reality. The melamine poisoning was actually done on purpose. So it wasn't like it just happened or laziness or something like that. It was done to make more money on a product to get the protein level up. And the wheat, that was a wheat gluten, right? The wheat gluten from China was actually human grade. So it wasn't like they were sneaking in some cheap, that this was human grade wheat gluten. They could have ended up just as easily in your Domino's pizza dough, just as easily as in pet food. So most people don't know that. They actually think it was some kind of cheap ingredient from China or something like that. But for Rodney, what a life changing perspective. To say he's totally unbiased would be, of course, ridiculous because of the personal tragedy he went through. Let's look at prescription diet. Now, Hill's prescription diet, and Purina makes some veterinary diets, so does Royal Canin. I have watched all three of those brands. Their diets save animals. I mean, again, when you're in the clinic all day long, I can't imagine how many hundreds of clinics I was in and how many veterinarians I worked with over 34 years. But you get to see the results of these diets. Now you're Mrs. Jones and your cat gets diagnosed with kidney disease, and you put your cat on Hill's prescription diet KD for cats, and everything kind of normalizes, and the cat starts gaining weight again, and she's eating, and she's back to acting normal. She feels good. Hey, everything is great, and she lives another 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Okay, I've seen 9, 10 years with renal cats. Okay, what is the perspective or what's the bias that woman has, Mrs. Jones, after eventually her cat passes? Oh, she just thinks veterinarians and the diets that they recommend are just awesome. I mean, it just worked wonders on her cat, and maybe she looked into it a little bit, maybe she didn't, just trusted her vet. but she has quite a bias toward veterinary diets. There is a gentleman out there, and I actually did correspond with him a little bit. Very gracious man. Guy's name is David. He started a podcast in Europe, and when I found him, he was anti-prescription diet. Hills is garbage, all that stuff you hear from people. And when I read his story was that he had a 13-year-old cat that was diagnosed with kidney disease, was put on Hill's prescription diet KD, dry or canned, I can't remember now. But he started a podcast because he was upset that he had put his cat on this diet, and the cat died with kidney disease and was never quite the same on that diet. Okay, that sounds like the beginning of the story. Like, okay, well, there's a bias this guy's going to have against therapeutic diets from the vet clinic, right? Well, let me finish the story. The cat was diagnosed at 13 years of age. The cat lived to be 21 with renal disease. Okay, from age 13 to 21. 21, boy, that's pretty awesome, right? Was she not the same as she was before diagnosed with kidney disease? I suppose not, but she was alive and still doing well. He would have been totally satisfied. Any veterinarian would have said, wow, here's a success story for KD. This is great to have, what is that, 7 years up to 21 with renal disease for 7 years. That's incredible. Okay, that's a great success story. I'm sure the vet thought that. Well, David got on social media and started listening to certain veterinarians out there. I won't name them, but those celebrity veterinarians and those celebrity people like Rodney, okay, with his bias. And guess what? He came away with, oh my God, I was feeding a terrible food with horrible ingredients that was actually killing my cat. She already had kidney disease, and I basically killed her. Think of the guilt and the shame and the frustration that this man had, so much to the point he started a podcast against ultra processed foods and against Hills and Royal Canin and Purina. So think about his bias versus Mrs. Jones. They both almost had the same experience. They had a cat with renal disease, went on a therapeutic diet. The cat lived for years with it, but yet he got some additional information from somebody that said, oh, that stuff is garbage. That's awful. Look at the corn gluten meal, and look at this and look at that. Ingredientists, as I call them. Not nutritionists, but ingredientists. They just look at ingredients and pull them apart and judge them. And his perspective, his bias is totally different than Mrs. Jones. Okay, so do you see the power of bias? How about, and I see this all the time, it doesn't happen all the time on my channel, but I read other channels and I see it constantly. A person will say, I'm feeding prescription diet, or I'm feeding Royal Canin's, name that food, their hypoallergenic diet. And it's the only food that my dog isn't scratching anymore, or my dog's stool is normal now. Everything is great, but please help me. I've got to get off this food. I know this is a horrible food. I've been on social media. I've been on this channel. I've been on that channel. I know I need to get off this food because it's so terrible. It's working great, but I know it's just garbage, and I feel terrible feeding it. Do you see the power of bias? Instead of her realizing, wait a minute, my vet recommended this food. I trust my vet that he knows something. Okay. He recommends this food. It's the only thing that works. The cat is doing great, but I feel awful because I know how bad this food is. Because these people over here that have no credentials whatsoever, they don't have any nutritional training whatsoever. They're just on YouTube. They're popular. They're good looking. I don't know. They're passionate. And they totally change that person's bias that, oh my goodness, I've got to get off this food. This food is terrible. Even though their eyes see, oh my goodness, the cat is doing great. Okay. It's one of the motivations for me to continue to make videos. Do you see the power of bias? And when you say you're unbiased, no, you're not. I'm not unbiased, and neither are you. Our experience definitely molds our bias. Don't say you don't have a bias. Can you imagine to not have any bias toward the pet food industry or different pet foods? that means you know nothing about any of it. I mean, you really are just so ignorant, so totally anti-knowledge of the whole topic. That's the only way you could be totally unbiased. I mean, trying to think of the things that I'm unbiased about. If somebody said some NBA basketball player is better than this NBA basketball player, I guess I have to admit I am totally unbiased. I don't follow basketball. I don't like basketball. I don't know anybody that plays basketball. So yeah, I guess in that way. But why would you then ask me for my advice about basketball? Okay, so anybody that has knowledge of a topic, their bias is coming along with that knowledge. Does that make any sense? And including you, okay? As a pet parent, you may not have as much knowledge as I have. You don't have the experience I have, but you do have your own experience. Now we're switching from experience to who are your teachers? Who are the people that you're listening to, and more importantly, that you're trusting, okay? And don't say, well, I don't have it. You do. There are people teaching you, whether you call them teacher or not, that's a whole different story. But you're on social media, you're watching my channel, so I know you're watching others. Most of you are watching Dr. Ray. Okay, she's my. It's like I think we're kind of a team, and I love it because she's awesome. So I love being little part of her channel. She was my first subscriber, which is pretty cool. And so you're listening to me. You're listening to Dr. Ray, Dr. M. She's another one out there. There's only a few that I really think are teaching you the real truth. But you got to make a choice. Do I trust Dr. Ray and Glenn and the stuff they're telling me? Because it's really pretty much totally opposed to by Dr. Becker and Dr. Judy and Rodney and Rachel and, Dr. Smith. There's a few of them out there. We're totally giving you totally opposite information. So this is where you take that experience you have and you decide, hey, this guy makes sense. But I realize I'm coming with my bias, you're coming with your bias. Now we're both going to evaluate my words and my experience and the stuff that I present. And it's up to you. It's a real responsibility. You have to make that choice. Is Dr. Becker correct? Is Glenn correct? Is Dr. Ray correct? Is you're going to pull different pieces, kind of like a puzzle, and figure out this is what I believe. And so your teachers, the people you give authority to, and I, not that you're giving me authority, but if you're trusting what I'm saying, you're giving a certain amount of authority to me to communicate to you. And it's just as true in every other area of my life that I can think about. When I think about politics, who are the people that I'm believing and trusting and forming my bias? Same way with religion. Here's a Bible verse. And if I'm a Protestant, this is how I perceive that Bible verse because it is the authority and the Word of God. And if I'm a Catholic, I interpret that a little different because the Catholic Church has taught me with the authority that I'm giving the Catholic Church. They tell me it means this. If I'm a Jehovah's Witness, I totally have a total different perspective to that Bible verse because I am trusting the Watchtower Society in Brooklyn, New York, that they are the authority that tells me how to interpret Scripture. It's the same words on the paper, okay? We're all agreeing that it's really important, that it's God's word, but depending on whose authority I give, that's the interpretation that I'm going to have. Okay, so does that make sense? We got politics, we got religion, yeah, pet food. So I want to give you real quick 3 red flags that when you see this, you've got bias marketing going on. Now, real quick, let me show you because this is just kind of silly. Here's a food that has literally no biased marketing behind it, no bias whatsoever. Okay, here's the food. If that's what you're looking for, you need to buy this. Here it is. Okay, you see it? Bare shelves. In other words, there's no such diet. There's no such diet out there that I want to get the information on that diet and I'm going to get it from an unbiased source. It doesn't exist. That's why, what's my mantra? Mission, nutrition mission, folks. What's our mantra? Show me the nutrients. The nutrient levels, you know what? They don't care about your bias. The ingredients do. The ingredient panel could be manipulated totally to get you to play on your bias, to get you to buy that food. Nutrients, there they are. Okay, if they're being honest, here's the nutrient levels. I can tell the quality of the food. I can tell the quality of the ingredients. I can tell how healthy or unhealthy it is for my dog or cat. Um, that's all in the nutrients. Just show me the nutrients. Show me the protein. Show me the calcium and phosphorus and sodium, things like that, the vitamin E level. I don't care about the ingredient panel and what the fancy ingredient is first or the first five. That's all silly. So there is a way to know, and that's the way through the nutrients. But what's the marketing that is out there? How do we find red flags for bias marketing that's trying to use your bias? The first one I would say is definitely the ones that use extremes. And best way to explain that is, well, Hills and Royal Canin and Purina just use garbage ingredients. Just crap is in their food. It's just all this awful stuff. As soon as they go to the extreme, you know this is just bias marketing. They're not really trying to be honest. I will never do that. If somebody says I choose to feed raw, you know what? I don't care what form you use. You could use raw, slowly cooked, canned, kibble. The form doesn't matter to me because within each of those forms, there's great diets and there's really awful diets based on the nutrients, right? So when I hear this form is bad or kibble is bad or all this other stuff, I know okay, that's just those extremes are coming from trying to work on my bias. Second would be the repetitious stuff that they throw at you. What am I talking about? Uh, Chicken is the first ingredient. Uh, Kibble is cooked so much that the nutrients are destroyed. Um, it has byproducts. It has fillers, whatever fillers are. Okay, those are the four, and I'm sure I could just keep going on. Synthetic vitamins. Just throw out this verbiage, throw out this word salad because you're hoping some of those words will click in with that person's bias from the other stuff they've learned. And aha, I don't want that food. I guess I'll buy this person's food. What was the third? I jotted it down and let me just look real quick because I want to. Oh, yeah. Motivation. That those food companies, they're just out for money. They're just out for profits. That's why their foods are so bad. Okay, we are saints. We are, as pure as the wind-driven snow. We only make our food because of the love for animals, not to make any money. Okay, when you start hearing that, I really hope. Come on, that has to be the lamest one, but I'm sure there's people that buy into it. No, everybody's out to make a profit. If they're not making a profit, they're not going to survive. And I like saying this. I don't say it often enough. You know what? With the profit you're making, Mr. Pet Food Company, what are you doing with it? Are you spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on nutritional research to discover new innovations of how to deal with disease or how to manage rapid growth rate in puppies or whatever? What are you doing with your money? I know what Royal Canin, Hills, and Purina are doing with their money. They are spending millions with an M in research and over years and decades of research. Most of what we know about canine and feline nutrition, in one way or another, either was done by those companies or they helped to fund that research. That's pretty cool. I like that. Even now with the awful hurricanes going on, I love the fact, and I've seen it on Dr. Ray's channel and uh, on my Facebook because of all my connections with Hills, the amount, thousands of pounds of food, pet food is going to towns in North Carolina and Florida and all over the Southeast. I know Purina is involved in it too. That's where they're spending their money. Those evil profit, all they're interested in is profit. But this little food company over here, they're just wonderful. They're just doing it for the love of animals. BS, baloney. Okay, look at Farmer's Dog. My God, I can't turn on my phone or my computer or the TV without Farmer's Dog commercials. That's costing them lots of money. How much money are they putting into nutritional research? I don't know, but I don't see Hills and Royal Canin and Purina spending gobs of money on advertising, but yet they are perceived as profit oriented. So again, all that marketing that you're seeing out there, I guess this is what I'm getting at, is they're feeding your bias. They're feed your bias, and then they just keep feeding you so that you buy their product. Let's get back to show me the nutrients. Let's talk about nutrition. And so for those of you that discover my channel and put on, oh, well, he's so biased, he's a biased for this or biased against that, absolutely, I'll be the first one to say it. Maybe I need a t-shirt that says that, totally biased as far as pet food. Okay, something like that. um, I have no quibble with kibble. I don't know, I have, but that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. It's still autumn out there. Get out and enjoy it. And the leaves are just starting to fall, which really bums me out because I love autumn, and I'm not ready for the cold weather in winter. So I hope you're all doing great. Keep up the comments. I'm trying to keep up responding, but I appreciate every single one of them. I really do. And we'll talk to you later.